went halfway through.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll do it again because there's a lot remaining. Okay, so we'll do it again. I'm reading each sentence. Okay. Now, it is notable that with a slight but important variation of language, the Gita describes the same way both the action of the divine in bringing about the ordinary birth of creatures and action in his birth as the avatar. Okay. So basically, when the divine is coming down, okay, he can come down fully from his Satchidananda status and enters into a human being. That is the avatar. But when the divine comes down as an individual into an individual and he becomes a psychic being in everybody, or in animals and other inanimate matters, he becomes the living presence, okay, in a stone. That is different. There is a slight difference in this thing. Essentially, it's the same. It's a divine descending down into the physical world. Okay? But there is a difference. That difference we will see now. That's what we had the last time we were discussing. An avatar is one who is fully conscious of his divinity. And a normal human being is not at all conscious of the divine element in him, let alone being feeling divine. But this also becomes very clear when you remember the phenomenon of avatarhood in Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who lived about 400 years earlier. Sometimes he used to behave like an avatar. Okay, he knows he's fully divine, and when people come to him, he will bless them, he will grant them, okay, boons or whatever you want. He will behave exactly like an avatar. But at other times, he is like praying to the divine. Okay, so the same thing also with the mother. Okay, mother when she is writing the prayers and meditations, okay, she is doing it as though it's a human being praying to the divine. Okay, but later on, Mana has got a few books on this. He has written that mother told him that I am the supreme and I know it, and Srimdasa has told me that. That is the avatar. Okay, so we know that in the beginning, the avatar may be an ordinary human being, but not ordinary in this sense that he is capable now of the divine descending into him. We are not capable because our body is dense and dark, our vital also is full of impurities, our mind is confused and doesn't have knowledge. So the light of the divine cannot come down into us. But it can come down after we have evolved through many lives and become now capable of receiving the light from above. Our mind can become pure and we are more advanced. Even our vital can become pure and the light can descend right up to the heart region or even the navel region. Okay, that's a vital region. But it does not necessarily come down below that because the darkness of the body is too much. So this is what the difference is there between these two things. Okay, so now that's what he's saying. Now it is notable that with a slight but important variation of language, the Gita describes the same way both the action of the divine in bringing about the ordinary birth of creatures and his action in his birth as the avatar. And the two words used are one is avashtabhya, okay? Pressing down on my own nature, I take birth. And the other is adhisthaya. Adhisthaya is from above, supervising. Okay? Consciousness descending into matter, that's it, avasthaya, adhisthaya. These are the two words. Otherwise, the process is the same. Okay? So, I read the next sentence. Leaning upon my own nature, prakritim swam avashtabhya. Avashtabhya. It will say later, I lose forth variously, Visrijami, this multitude of creatures helplessly subject to owing to the control of Prakriti, Avasham Prakritir Vashat. Okay, so this is what he's saying that there's a difference between the two. In the human being, ordinary human being, he is not conscious of his divinity and the divine element in him. But the avatar is fully conscious. That's it. Then I go to all this we did last time. Standing upon my own nature, okay, that is adhisthaya. Standing upon my own nature, it says here, I am born by myself Maya, Prakritim Swam Adhisthaya, Atma Mayaya. I lose forth myself, Atmanam Srijamya. I lose forth myself, I let myself descend down into the physical world. The action implied in the word avashtabhya, is a forceful downward pressure by which the object controlled is overcome, oppressed, blocked, or limited in its movement, okay? limited in its movement or working, and becomes helplessly subject to the controlling power, avasham vasha. Nature in this action becomes mechanical, and its multitude of creatures are held helpless in the mechanism, not lords of their own action. In the normal human being, the divine does come down, but he willingly, he becomes subject to the forces of nature. That's his aim. Not lords, as he's saying. Nature in this action becomes mechanical, and its multitude of creatures are held helpless in this mechanism, not lords of their own action. We are all anisha. Okay? On the contrary, the action implied in the word adhisthaya, dwelling in or standing upon and over the nature, fully controlling the nature, a conscious control and government by the indwelling Godhead, Adhishthatri, Devata, in which the Purusha is not helplessly driven by the Prakriti through ignorance, but rather the Prakriti is full of the light and the will of the Purusha. There is the difference. We are all potential avatars because the divine has come down into us. But there are some, when the avatar is not a potential avatar anymore, he is a divine in a human body. That's the difference. But the Prakriti is full of light and the will of the Purusha. In the avatar, the body mind life also feeds itself to the divine. In mother's case, even her, every cell, physical cell in the body was aware of its divinity. Okay, so I read the next sentence. Therefore, in the normal birth, that which is loose forth, created, as we say, is the multitude of creatures or becomings, bhuta gramam. Okay? Gramam is a collection, and bhuta all the created beings. In the divine birth, that which is loose forth, self-created, is a self-conscious, self-existent being, Atmanam. But the Vedantic distinction between Atma and Bhutani is that which is made in European philosophy between the being and its becomings. Okay? The being is the essential divine, and the becomings are in the physical world, all the creatures that are there, they are the becomings. They get covered over by nature. In both cases, the Maya is the means of the creation or manifestation. Now, interesting, the discussion on Maya. Okay? In both cases, Maya is the means of the creation or manifestation. Maya, the power to create forms. When the divine is coming down, he creates a form, a body, mind, life, into which he descends. So that is the power of Maya. But Maya also is a power to delude at the lower level. Okay, so that's the thing. In both cases, Maya is the means of the creation or manifestation. See, just like the principle of the subtle becoming gross, the principle of light coming down and becoming dense, it applies to Maya also. So at the highest level, Maya is the power of the divine to create forms. Okay? But when it comes down, it becomes the power to mislead, okay, because you are covered up, it becomes dark. So Maya is the power of misleading, and you become ignorant. That is Maya, okay. You become mood, you become confused, and you become um, deluded. That's a Maya. At a higher level, Maya is the divine power to create forms. And at the lower level, these forms, you identify yourself with the forms, a human being, and you are deluded. You don't know that you are the Atman. In both cases, Maya is the means of the creation of manifestation. But in the divine birth, it is by self Maya, Atma Maya. That means the higher Maya, only to create forms. Not in the involution of the lower Maya of the ignorance. There you are. Lower Maya of the ignorance is the one that creates ignorance and delusion and moha. But the conscious action of the self-existent Godhead in its phenomenal self-representation. Note the word phenomenal and self-representation. First of all, we'll look at the word phenomenal. Phenomenal is that which is born and that which ends. A phenomenon, an event, is that which has a beginning and an end. And the other word is self-representation. When the divine comes down, the human being is a representation. He is a symbol. He is not the actual divine. He is a self-representation, like a shadow. Okay, that's it. Like this, good example is mother symbol. Huh? That is represents mother. It's a self-representation, but it's not the mother. But through that self-representation, you can go to the actual thing. Okay, phenomenal self-representation, all forms in the universe, well aware of its operation and its purpose. Okay, that which the Gita calls as well Yoga Maya. In the ordinary birth, Yoga Maya is used by the divine to envelop and conceal itself from the lower consciousness. So, the lower Maya, the divine creates veils, creates sheaths. He creates a physical sheath, a vital sheath, and a mental sheath, and hides himself on purpose. Again, we come back to the idea of the adventure of plunging yourself into the infinite darkness and escaping from there. Each one of us is doing that, but we have forgotten that we are doing that. Okay, so that's the thing. In the ordinary birth, ordinary human being birth, Yogamaya is used by the divine to envelop and to conceal itself from the lower consciousness. So it becomes for us the means of the ignorance, avidya maya. But it is by this same yoga maya that self-knowledge also is made manifest in the return of our consciousness to the divine. It is the means of the knowledge, vidya maya. And in the divine birth, it so operates as the knowledge controlling and enlightening the works which are ordinarily done in the ignorance. So, in fact, this what he's saying in the last bit is exactly like the there's an interesting passage in Life Divine where he says the way of coming down, okay, is done by Maya, the coming involution, and then the evolution is the same path you have to go up. Okay, it's a double ladder. Okay, so this is what he's saying, that it is Maya only brings you down, and Maya also takes you up, because you have to go through whatever instruments you have got. Okay, suppose a farmer doesn't have a tractor, but he has only a spade or a plow and 2 bullocks. He has to make do with that. Exactly in the same way, we are not conscious about what are the instruments we have. We have a body, we have a life, and we have a mind. We have to make use of these. That's why you have this system. The ones who make use of the mind, that path is Jnana Yoga. The one who makes use of the vital is Bhakti Yoga. And the one who makes use of his body is a Hatha Yoga. Okay. So you have to make do with what you have, and slowly, as you keep going up, your instrumentation also becomes more and more perfect. How the instrumentation become more perfect? First of all, drishti, okay? Then you have concentration. Then you have intuition, okay? Identification. These are all the tools which improve. Those are the instruments at the higher level. At the lower level, the instruments of knowledge are only body, mind, life. In the spiritual planes of consciousness, that changes to sight and hearing, okay? Drishti and shruti. They like the some of the use words in inspiration and revelation. Okay, these are the two instruments that you use. Okay, and finally, when you go up, you don't need any instruments at all because you yourself have become the divine. So the difference between an ordinary birth and a divine birth is very clear. Huh? In a divine birth, and mind you, that divine birth can come in the middle of a life for an avatar. Okay, and sometimes it can be even intermittent, like in the case of Chaitanya. Okay, Sri Aurobindo and mother both were very matter of fact in the beginning. They had the potential, but they had the. In fact, Sri Aurobindo writes to his wife Niralini that I know that I have the power to lift up this fallen race. Okay, normally human people will not say that, but he says I was born with this power. So he was conscious that there is some extra power, but the divinity aspect was not there. It came much later. So then he became an avatar. Exactly the same way with mother also. If she is a divine to begin with, why should she write the prayers and meditations, which are the a guidance for those who are in the normal physical world trying to rise up in consciousness? So this is what the difference is. An ordinary human being, divine is there in him, but he does not know. An avatar is fully aware of his divinity. And even his body, mind, life knows that it is divine. That's the difference. Now we can go to the next paragraph. Okay. The language of the Gita shows therefore. It's the last paragraph of the chapter. And the next one will be the process of avatarhood. How does he, the mechanism of Maya, that we will see next time. So let's read. Who will read? One of you can read. If you have the text.
Shall I read?
Yes, do that.
The language of the Gita shows, therefore, that the divine birth is that of the conscious Godhead in our humanity and essentially the opposite of the ordinary birth, even though the same means are used. Because it is not the birth into the ignorance, but the birth of the knowledge, not a physical phenomenon, but a soul birth. It is the soul's coming into birth as well as the self existence being controlling consciously its becoming and not lost to self knowledge in the cloud of the ignorance. It is the soul born into the body as Lord of nature, standing above and operating in her freely by its will, not entangled and helplessly driven round and round in the mechanism. For it works in the knowledge and not as most do in the ignorance. It is the secret soul in all coming forward from its governing secrecy behind the veil to possess wholly in a human type. But as the divine, the birth which ordinarily it possesses only from behind the veil, as the Ishvara, while the outward consciousness in front of the veil is rather possessed than in possession, because there it is partially conscious being, the jiva lost to self knowledge and bound in its works through a phenomenal subjection to nature. The avatar, therefore, is a direct manifestation in humanity by Krishna, the divine soul of the divine, of that divine condition of being to which Arjuna, the human soul, the type of a highest human being, a vibhuti, is called upon by the teacher to arise, and to which he can only arise by climbing out of the ignorance and limitation of his ordinary humanity. It is the manifestation from above of that which we have to develop from below. It is the descent of God into that divine birth of the human being into which we moral creatures must climb. It is the attracting divine example given by God to man in the very type and form and perfected model of our human existence.
So it is very clear. Man has to rise from lower to higher nature. In the avatar, it descends from the higher to the lower nature. That's the difference. One is coming down fully conscious, and the other one is he has already come down, but we have to go up. Okay? That's the difference between man and avatar. Okay, so the clear distinction is there in the in infancy and adolescence. Avatar can be unconscious and ignorant of his avatarhood. Okay, that is possible. In the second case, the avatar descends into evolutionary soul and body. If so, is there a blurring between the two? I've made a note here. And yes, the difference is only of consciousness. The avatar becomes fully conscious of his divinity. He can bless you, he can help you, he can do all sorts of things which a normal human being cannot. Okay, so that's the difference. We'll go through each sentence. Okay, we have got some time. We'll see that. In this. The language of the Gita. I'm reading each sentence. The language of the Gita shows, therefore, that the divine birth is that of a conscious Godhead in our humanity and essentially the opposite of the ordinary birth, even though the same means are used. The same means the divine coming down into the lower creation, okay, coming down into a body mind life. But the avatar, even though he knows vaguely that he can be an avatar. He has a vague sense of that. In the beginning, it may be vague. It becomes absolutely clear afterwards, later to him. They, if you take the case of Buddha also, okay, he was an ordinary person, and he was even struck with suffering when he came out of his palace for the first time. He saw death, suffering, and old age. And all these imperfections he could not stand. So he gave up everything and went. And then with a huge amount of yoga, finally he becomes liberated, and then he is the avatar. Okay, so there is a difference between the two. The opposite of the ordinary birth, even though the same means are used. The same means is nothing, the descending. In the descent is a means, but in one it is fully conscious and controls body mind life. In the other, the body mind life controls you. Okay, normal human beings. That's the difference. I read the next sentence. Same means are used because it is not the birth into ignorance, but the birth of the knowledge. Not a physical phenomenon, but a soul birth. That's the difference. It is the soul's coming into birth as a self-existent being, controlling consciously its becoming. So, just now he has told us that being is the Purusha, the soul, and the becoming is the Prakriti. Okay, it becomes the. In a way, you can say the being is the light, and the becoming is the darkness below. Okay, but in that darkness, the divine is there hiding. Being controlling consciously is becoming, and not lost to self-knowledge in the cloud of ignorance. He is the avatar. It is a soul born into the body as Lord of nature. That's the avatar. He is fully in control of his nature, standing above and operating in her freely by its will, not entangled and helplessly driven round and round in the mechanism. Okay? So this is a normal man, helplessly driven. All of us, we think that I am thinking, I am talking, I am emoting, and I am acting. Actually, you are not. You are not at all in control of that. It's a nature which is controlling you. So that's what later on he will use two words. possessing and possessed. Okay. So in our case, we are possessed by nature. In the avatar, he possesses nature. That's the difference. He is master of nature. In our case, the nature is master of us. Okay. It is a soul born into the body as Lord of nature, standing above. Okay. Adhisthaya, standing above and operating in her freely by its will, not entangled and helplessly driven round and round in the mechanism. For it works in the knowledge and not as most do in the ignorance. The avatar works in the knowledge. The normal human being works in the ignorance. It is the secret soul in all coming forward. It is a secret soul in all coming forward from its governing secrecy behind the veil and to possess wholly in a human type, but as the divine. The birth which ordinarily it possesses only from behind the veil as the Ishwar, while the outward consciousness in front of the veil is rather possessed than in possession. There you are. In the ordinary human being, nature possesses the soul. And in the avatar, the soul possesses nature, is in control of nature. When you possess something, you are master of that. Okay? You have fully the uh, you are in control of it. So that's what he's saying here. Very interesting word. We are possessed by nature, but the avatar is in possession of nature. He possesses nature because there is a partially conscious being, the jiva. The jiva is the individual soul, lost to self-knowledge and bound in its works through a phenomenal subjection to nature. Now note the word phenomenal. That means to say that you are in ignorance, but it's a phenomenon. It's not permanent. Okay? This is what the materialists, the others think. The Mayavadins. They think that the soul is jiva lost to self-knowledge permanently. But no, it's only a phenomenon. You have the full right to escape from your slavery to nature. Now the last bit, so there is defining what an avatar is. From here, the avatar, therefore, up to the last, okay, and it's one sentence. No, two sentences. So here is defining the avatar. The avatar, we'll read the footnote later. Okay? The avatar, therefore, is a direct manifestation in humanity. A direct manifestation, not through the veils in humanity by Krishna, the divine soul of that divine condition of being to which Arjuna, the human soul, the type of the highest human being, a vibhuti, is called upon by the teacher to arise, and to which he can only arise by climbing out of the ignorance and limitation of his ordinary humanity. A vibhuti is one who is fully conscious of his superiority to normal man, but he is not fully an avatar. He is capable of some tremendous work. That's the difference between an avatar and a vibhuti. He is called upon by the teacher to arise, and to which he can only arise by climbing out of the ignorance and limitation of his ordinary humanity. It is the manifestation from above of that which we have to develop from below. So for normal human beings, that's exactly what we have to develop. Okay? From below, we have to develop into the divine. It is a descent of God, the descent of God into that divine birth of the human being into which we mortals, creatures must climb. He is coming down and we have to climb up. It is the attracting divine example given by God to man in the very type and form and perfected model of our human existence. So this is the difference between avatar and the human being. Okay, so that completes the chapter, the possibility and purpose of avatar. So the possibility is because our Indian conception is that the divine is there everywhere, even in the physical world. Most of the other religions don't accept that. Matter is the opposite of spirit, so they don't accept. But in the Indian Vedantic view, everything is the divine. And if everything is the divine, even in a physical body, the divine can be there. So that's first. What is the purpose? The purpose is to show other human beings how to live and how to climb up to a level, a higher level. That's the purpose. In the Gita, the purpose seems to be only to encourage the virtuous and um, remove the non-virtuous, the sinners. But that's only a way of saying, no? So this dharma sansapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So that is one. But as Ranganath said in the Gita, in this chapter, that the divine could have done that very well by without descending. Okay, he can do dharma sansapanaya, dharma sansapanartham. He can do without coming down. But the main thing is how to show human beings how to aspire and how to rise to the next level of consciousness by becoming an example. That's what is. Okay. So that finishes the next is the process of avatarhood. How does that descent take place? If there's a difference between the divine avatar and the ordinary human being, the process is the same, he has told us. It's a descent. So what is the process by which the difference is maintained and executed? That's what we will see next time. Okay? So I stop here today because today is the Darshan day, 9th December. It has been postponed from 5th to, it has been shifted from 5th December to 9th December. Okay, so we stop here today.
Barabar, Rangada. Thank you, Rangada. Barabar.
Okay, au revoir
Merci
everybody.
beaucoup.
Everybody.
Au revoir.
Everyone, bonne journée.